Hello everybody and good morning and welcome to the United Stands. I'm Mark Goldbridge and this is your latest Manchester United news the morning after, the night before. A lot of frustration, a lot of anger and most of it justified. Everybody's got a choice to make and is it the end for Erik ten Hag? Well, Manchester United will make that choice, of course. Some demanding that it happens today. That Erik ten Hag be sacked today. We bring an interim in and we remove him from this football club. Some still believe that this is just what's happened before and changing a manager lets off those who have been responsible for these problems for the last decade. Where do you stand? What are your thoughts? We're going to get into it on the show this morning. Look, I've been on the radio already this morning. I've had my say, but I've also heard a lot of other people as well demanding angrily. You know, I've seen pictures of clowns. I've seen all sorts. And I suppose there's a few early hits I would talk about. I mean, we've just had... I don't even want to use this guy's name anymore, but the Manchester Evening News does have a good relationship with Manchester United. So I'm just going to call him the chief correspondent because I'm still absolutely disgusted by what he said about Anthony Martial last night. I thought it was... People have called it xenophobia. If the shoe fits, I just find that ridiculous last night. Some of the stuff he said about Anthony Martial ahead of the Crystal Palace game, individualising absentee players on Anthony Martial is just disgusting journalism. But that particular journalist has said this morning, the podcast's out at lunchtime, mate. It was bank holiday yesterday, so it will be out. They've said that Jose Mourinho would like the Man United job, but Man United don't want Mourinho. Well, thank God for that. I mean, fucking please don't bring Mourinho back. Absolutely not. I mean, it's... I suppose, look, there's a few things that I want to get into this morning. Should Ten Hag be sacked this morning? There's a poll going on, keep or sack Ten Hag. I actually believe there will be a change in the United fandom over the next few hours. I think people who were wanting Ten Hag out last night will actually start coming back to being Ten Hag in. So I don't think INEOS are going to sack him. I still think that there is a level of understanding around what's going on. I don't listen to Jamie Carragher. I think he's the luckiest guy in the world to still have a job in media after the things that he's done. So I don't listen to what he's got to say. He's got no credibility about Manchester United. He's been talking about it in his white trainers all bloody season. So don't really care what he's got to say. Don't really care what certain journalists have got to say. I listen to the fans, and I listened to the fans last night at Selhurst Park, never stopped singing, and I will repeat it this morning. There are footballers who can afford to pay them all back. If you want a bit of positive PR, Man United, Sir Jim Radcliffe, pay those fans back because that's a disgrace last night. And really, it should come out of the players' wages because they were an abomination. To a man, they were an abomination last night. But should Ten Hag be sacked this morning? Look, honestly, I'm going to be really pragmatic about this because I have my beliefs, but they're not stubborn. Well, they are personally stubborn, but I'm not naive to the fact that sacking the manager is probably going to happen. I've said that for a few weeks now, whether I agree with it or not. Sacking the manager this morning, I think, is very different to sacking the manager at the end of the season. If you sack the manager at the end of the season, I think that there is a respect there, and there is an understanding that they don't want Ten Hag for their project. Okay. If you sack Ten Hag today or next Monday after we get beat by Arsenal, you're basically saying the manager is the problem. Let's get an interim in for the last 3 games to try and let these players have another chance. I don't want that. I don't want that. And if INEOS are thinking of doing that, they need to do it with their eyes wide open. Because I tell you what will piss me off more than anything is if we sack Ten Hag today or next week and then suddenly against Newcastle and Brighton and Man City, we play amazing. Now, that might be a reason for some of you to do it because you want to win the FA Cup final, of course. But I'm telling you now, these players will suddenly be fit and playing well the minute Ten Hag gets sacked. And that is a disgrace. And it's a disgrace we've seen before. Oh, he's at the wheel. They did it to Mourinho. These players will start playing well for a few months again when the manager gets removed because they are egotistical, brand-led players who are out for themselves. And it has to be about the manager. It can't be about them. So that's why we're seeing downing of the tools and players that don't want to play. And that's why we're seeing poor performances because some of these players will switch it on and off dependent on what mood they're in. They are not Manchester United players. We don't want light switch players. We want consistent Manchester United players. And we will see that. We will see that. So maybe it is a reason to sack him because the results will suddenly improve. We've seen it before. We'll suddenly start playing in a very different way. And you get people talking about coaching. Of course, that's absolutely fine. But when you've got players that don't do their job, how can you coach them? I saw on the first goal yesterday, Casemiro run forward like he's playing on the beach. You know, having a laugh. Like, just flying into tackles, not sticking to position. There's two centre-backs. You can't have a player that's running around like that. You know, trying to let the ball go out for a goal kick and it gets cut back. I mean, he is a disgrace. He can clap the fans at the end. I don't care. Absolute disgrace in a United shirt the last few weeks. Unrecognisable to one of the best holding midfielders I've ever seen play the game. So you can talk about coaching, but when you've got players going renegade, then you're going to struggle. You really are. A few things I want to pick up on, though. Let's bring it back. Let's put the pressure onto Ten Hag because he is the manager, of course, and the manager must always be accountable. I've heard a few people saying that that's the sort of game that gets managers sacked. Absolutely. Absolutely correct. That is the sort of result that gets managers sacked. But should the focus be on the manager? That is the sort of result that gets the manager sacked. But who got that result? Who? Every one of those goals was preventable. And every one of those players played terrible. So if that's the sort of result that gets the manager sacked, are we not walking down the normal pathway of this is what they do? That reminded me a lot of Watford under Solskjaer. It reminded me a lot of Liverpool under Mourinho. It reminded me a lot of Van Gaal's last few games. It definitely reminds me of Ranik. I mean, I was on the radio this morning and Ali McCoy said that this is as bad as it gets for Manchester United. This is the worst it's been. And I said, sorry, Ali, with all due respect, I watch Man United every week and a lot of United fans listening will be saying the same. That's not as bad as it gets. That's not as bad as we've been. We got beat by Liverpool 7-0 last year. We got smacked up at Goodison Park under Solskjaer when he'd just been given the job. Solskjaer got the job in the March. We got battered at Everton in was it the May or the late April? Under Ranik 2 years ago, it was worse than this, or as bad actually. So this is not, you know, I can't argue with people who want to change the manager, and I can't argue if the manager gets sacked. But what I can do is come in with facts and talk about you're never winning a game of football with players who can't be arsed, and this is not as bad as it's got. You know, you're suffering with a bloody concussion if you think that is as bad as it gets for Man United. We have been here before. We have had our arse kicked multiple times over the last decade. This is not the worst United team we've seen by a long way. We've seen this too often, and some of these players are still here. And people, again, I was on the radio today, and I can't remember if it was Jeff or Ali who said it. They were talking about injuries, and they were like, "You've got to acknowledge the injuries, but it can never be an excuse." And I saw somebody on Twitter last night saying that the injury excuse can't be an excuse anymore. You can't keep using the injury excuse. And I thought, but it is an excuse, and it's not gone away as an excuse. If anything, it's got worse. Like, we've never had a time where it's got better. Well, we did. We had an hour against Wolves where it looked like it was getting better when we had Martinez, Shaw, Casemiro had been injured. He played at holding midfield. Apart from that hour, this season, we've never had look, if you want to sack the manager, fine. That's your excuse. If I want to say the injuries are clearly the biggest problem, then you get in your lane and I'll get in mine. But this pretends that injuries are not an excuse. Look at where Newcastle are in the league. Look at where Chelsea are in the league. Look at where Brighton are in the league. Look at where we are in the league. The most injuries out of anybody. Man City last season had a decrease in injuries from the year before. They've hardly had any injuries again. That's what you need to look at. The big teams that do well are the teams that don't have injuries. And we've had a ridiculous amount of injuries. And for people to say it's not an excuse, it's an excuse that's getting even bigger. Like, our injury record's getting even bigger. And can I just take a moment in a morning of negativity to shout out Johnny Evans, who was not fit. Now, somebody ran it as an exclusive that Johnny Evans failed a fitness test on Monday morning. I don't need to know whether he did or he didn't. I've got eyes. He's not fit. I mean, there was one of the chances that Onana should have saved where I think it was Mateta skinned Johnny Evans like a banana, but he ain't fit. Mason Mount's not fit. I've got eyes. But Johnny Evans puts a Man United shirt on, injured. What a surprise. Like, if Johnny Evans hadn't have played, I don't know who would have played at centre-back, because McTominay's not fit. Who would have played at centre-back with Casemiro last night? It could have been 8-0. So, Johnny Evans clearly wasn't fit, but he'll put a Man United shirt on. Some of those players, I don't care. I don't believe they're properly injured. I don't believe their injuries are bad enough to stop them playing. I don't need to name names because that's obviously unfair. I'm not that prat from the Manchester Evening News, but there are players out there that if this was a title running or an FA Cup final, they would be fit. And so big shout out to Johnny Evans playing when he was injured. But I look at that team last night. You've got injured Johnny Evans. You've got Casemiro, who's basically just retiring on the pitch. Eriksen's doing the same. Wan-Bissaka doesn't seem to care either. Dalot had a nightmare last night as well. Suddenly, you look at the result and then, Onana, don't know what his excuse is. I mean, really, he should have saved 3 goals. So 4-0 last night really probably should have been about 2-3-1 because we had a goal not ruled out. But we were always going to lose. We're always going to lose. And I don't know why when I wake up this morning, I'm hearing clips of people ringing in angry saying, sack him now, don't let him on the bus. And I'm like, God, football it really is for the masses. And there are different levels of the IQ train, aren't there? Because if last night's result is the one where you're calling Ten Hag a fraud and a clown and asking for him to be sacked, I think the shoe fits better for yourself because you should have already made that decision. And last night, most people with a brain knew we were going to lose that game anyway. So last night, I don't think changes anything. As we bring it back to whether he'll be sacked today, absolutely don't think he'll get sacked today. I don't think he'll get sacked today. I think the decision will be made at the end of the season after the FA Cup final. I think immediately after the FA Cup final, that Monday morning, because we'll probably lose, I wouldn't be surprised if that is when it will happen. I think people pushing for it now, I just don't see that happening, and I think that would be wrong. I really do. I don't think that the big thing for me, and this I suppose this is the big takeaway for me this morning, is you're Man United fans, and you know the problems at this football club. Like some of you would say, I never want to see people like Marcus Rashford or Christian Eriksen or Casemiro or anybody, whatever names you want, play for Man United again. I never want to see him play for Man United again. And that is based upon watching Man United over the last 5 years and seeing what the problems are. I know who I want to be part of this journey and I know not. And some of you might say, I want to keep Ten Hag, I want to keep Bruno, I want to keep Rashford, I want to keep Varane, and I want to sell 10 other players. Some of you might say, I want to sack Ten Hag, I want to keep Rashford, I want to keep Bruno, I want to sell 10 players. Some of you might want to sack Ten Hag, sell Rashford, sell Bruno, and sell another 10 players. Everyone's going to have a different mindset. But there ain't no United fan sat there this morning saying, I want to keep Ten Hag, I want to keep Rashford, I want to keep Bruno, I want to keep most of this squad. I don't really care if we buy any players. Let's just try again next season. No one's doing that. Everybody's plan is ruthless. And I think that's something I would say. Everybody's plan is ruthless. It's just different things, different levels of ruthlessness, different identities of ruthlessness. Nobody out there is saying, let's carry on like this. The worst ones are the ones who are saying, let's sack the manager and leave the players alone. But nobody's really saying that. The number one thing I think everybody is saying here is, whatever happens about the manager, whatever INEOS decide to do there, clear this bloody squad out, because there's certain players I and you cannot stomach in a United shirt next year. And I think they're probably going to get booed. And that would be disgusting to hear. I mean, I didn't like it with Fellaini. I didn't like it with Pogba. I didn't like it with Martial. Nobody wants to hear that. But I think some of these players, the well of goodwill has dried up like a drought. And I don't see a way back, because it's almost if they come back and start playing well, it's an insult. Because it will be a light switch. Oh, the manager's been sacked now. It's a new season. I'll try again. We know the identity of these players, and we know the mentality of these players. And taking it away from the fans for a moment, this is massively important. The Glazers wouldn't know their arse from their elbow when it comes to football and Manchester United. Their excuse is their greed and their incompetence. And it's been horrible for 20 years. But they're greedy and they're incompetent, and you've got no trust or respect in them because they haven't got a bloody clue. Sir Jim Ratcliffe runs the football side, and Sir Jim Ratcliffe is a lifelong Manchester United fan. If you and I and every other United fan is sat here now, ruthless, in different ways. As I said, some of you want to sack the manager and sell 15 players. Me, I want to keep the manager and sell 15 players. You're telling me Sir Jim Ratcliffe, as a lifelong Man United fan, is sat there going, let's sack the manager but not sell many players. He is not a Manchester United fan if that is his plan. And this is the thing that gives me hope. Because if he's a Man United fan, every Manchester United fan I know is a Man United fan because they watch the fucking team and they know the problems with the team. And everybody has a level of ruthlessness. You know, I was speaking to someone down the pub yesterday. They wanted to do things I didn't want to do. I'm not talking about down the pub, you know. I'm talking about like with Manchester United. So if Sir Jim Ratcliffe is a fan who's been watching this football club, then he will have a level of ruthlessness. I want to know what it is. Because if he doesn't, I don't believe he's a lifelong Man United fan, because only a lifelong Man United fan would know that we need major open heart surgery. And if he doesn't deliver that, then how is he any different to any other crap owner of a football club? My faith is there because if Sir Jim Ratcliffe supports Manchester United, every Manchester United fan I know has a different plan, but it's all ruthless. So Sir Jim's plan has to be ruthless. It can't be keep the manager, keep the players. It can't be sack the manager, keep the players. It's going to have to be whatever decision with the manager you make. But every single United fan knows we need to sell at least 10 of that first team squad. And if he doesn't deliver that, then he hasn't been watching United for the last 5 years. It's as simple as that. So if you're looking for a positive thing this morning, it cannot be that they bring a new manager in and keep the players. And it cannot be that they keep Ten Hag and keep the players. The most important thing for me is a clear out of the players. And the manager, to be honest, I think I tweeted it last night, I'm sort of like, for my health, backing away. I'm like, I don't want to be in that argument anymore. My decision is I wouldn't sack the manager. I really genuinely believe that if a clear out and a new set of players came in and some of the most important players came back, I think we can be better next season. I think we can be competitive next season. I think we can be a good team next season. But if they sack him and they bring another manager in, it's not my decision. I don't agree with it, but it's not my decision. But whatever happens with the manager, it's somewhat irrelevant, actually. It is. When you deep it, the manager thing is irrelevant. Because if the new manager has to work with these players, he's a dead man walking. Dead man walking. If the new manager comes in and says he wants to work with these players and give them another chance, he's a dead man walking. If the new manager comes in and INEOS say, there's not a lot of money, please work with what you've got, and he signs on the dotted line, he's a dead man walking. Whoever the manager is next season, INEOS need to take control. And this is where having a CEO, a Barada, a Blanc, an Ashworth, a Wilcox, they've got to take control away from the manager now. They've got to step in and say, look, we're stepping up and we're getting rid of these players. The great thing is, as Terry said, who wants these players? Because to me, that is going to be a big issue. You've got a goalkeeper who doesn't know the basics of goalkeeping. That's on Ten Hag, by the way. You know, this is not a safe place. This is a place of truth. The Onana, look, there's a lot of people out there who try and clip us up on here and try and take tweets from years ago and make us look idiots. Football fans change their minds. That's what happens. Football fans get things wrong. That's what happens. There's nobody in the media, there's nobody in our fan base, there's nobody in football that gets everything right all the time. Everybody gets things wrong. That's the beauty of football. That's why it's the beautiful game. But when it came to the goalkeeper, it was so obvious. So it's like the injuries we've got at the moment. I knew we'd lose to Crystal Palace because anybody who's watched football for any period of time and knows how the Premier League works and knows how football works, we were going to get beat last night. But conversely, a year ago, I knew that replacing someone like De Gea was going to cost us about 10 points. Because what you need... Forget Onana. When De Gea was let go for nothing, by the way, and replaced, De Gea may be limited in relation to his distribution. I'll put my hands up to that. He may not be the best on crosses. I'll put my hand up to that. But on pure goalkeeping ability, technical ability to get down low, to get shots out, to block shots, one-on-ones, probably one of the top 5 goalkeepers in the world when we let him go. In pure shot-stopping ability. And therefore, you've got to bring a goalkeeper in that is in the top 5 in the world on basic, pure technical goalkeeping. And we put a goalkeeper in who's very good with the ball at his feet. He's not in the top 20 when it comes to actual shot stopping. His technique is terrible. The way his angles are awful. He's too close to his line. He can't get down quick enough. He doesn't cover his front post. As a technical goalkeeper, I guarantee the top goalkeeping coaches in the world would dismantle his game like someone kicking down a Lego castle. It's just nowhere near the level that you need to be. And it's been like chalk and cheese in relation to De Gea's technical goalkeeping ability and Onana's. And the distribution thing that everybody wanted, we've not been able to do because we haven't had any defenders that can play a high line. So it's been a bloody nightmare in relation to Onana. Of course it has. But there's a lot of players that need to go. The only players that for me I'd sort of let off the hook, and they were terrible last night, are Mainu, Garnacho and Højlund, because they're so young and they're influenced by what's going on around them, and it's too much for them to have on their shoulders to get a United team going. But yeah, it's a really worrying time. It really is. I want to get into some of your comments because I also want to talk about quite an interesting thing about how many years I think we are away from any sort of success. I was asked this question this morning by Jeff Stelling on TalkSport. He said, how many years do you think Manchester United are away from success? And I said, well, I think in our fan base at the moment, we're in a period of turmoil, and I think some people are lost. And what I mean by that is, I think people are so emotional and so angry and so frustrated. But then you've got this INEOS takeover that's meant to be positive. So you've got to go looking for your negatives elsewhere. And actually, I think some fans, and I include myself in this, have just sort of taken a step back and gone, we're going to lose that Palace game. We're going to lose that Palace game before we play it. And if we win it, it won't be on Ten Hag. And if we lose it, it won't be on Ten Hag because that team is a shambles. We're going to lose. I also look at United and I step away and I go, even if INEOS get absolutely everything right from now for the next 2 years, and what I mean is they sell everyone who needs to go. They're ruthless. Every signing they bring in is a positive signing. We don't have another massive injury crisis. Even if everything goes right, I still think 3 years from today, so next season, the season after, and the season after that, 3 full seasons before we're anywhere near the top of the table. And probably season 4 and 5, you might compete for the title. And that's if everything goes right. So if everything goes right, and you know it won't, we're not going to be injury free. We're not going to sell everybody who needs to be sold, and we're not going to buy everyone who needs to be brought in. But even if they did, I still think 3 full seasons before you start competing. Because Man City are amazing. Arsenal are getting better and better. And I think Newcastle, Liverpool, maybe even Chelsea have got better foundations than us at the moment because they're not in massive debt. So I think we're 3 full seasons away. So 3 years before we even start competing. If anything goes wrong, i.e. the Glazers are still here, INEOS can't really do what they're meant to do, they're not good at what they do, they appoint the wrong manager, they buy the wrong players, 5 to 10 years. 5 to 10 years before we compete for a title again. If everything goes right, 3 to 5. If it goes wrong, 5 to 10. And that's my honest opinion. There is no quick pill anymore. There is no quick antidote. There is no quick fix. anymore. It's so obvious that that club from top to bottom is rotten and has been for a very long time. And with every manager that we bring in, we create a bigger pile of shit. Like, if Ten Hag gets... Here's an interesting one for you for the Ten Hag out brigade. If Ten Hag gets sacked and you bring in whoever, because I don't want to say some of the names because they make me depressed, but if they bring in a new manager, right, he walks in, he's got all the pile of shit from Van Gaal that's still here, from Mourinho that's still here, from Ollie that's still here, and then he's got people like Onana, and he's got people like Anthony potentially as well. Maybe Rasmus gets thrown on there. What I'm trying to say is the new man. I'm not saying they're shit, but what I'm saying, well, I'm very concerned about Onana, and I think a lot of people are very concerned about Anthony. But what I'm saying is, when a new manager comes in, he might not want a 5'10" centre back like Martinez. He might not want to use a 21-year-old striker. He certainly might not want a goalkeeper that's got no technical ability on his front post. So all the shit that Ten Hag had to deal with, the next manager now has to have another layer of shit because he's got Ten Hag's players that he didn't want either. So the new manager has a massive problem as well. And it just becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. And that to me is the problem. Did everyone ask for Sir Alex to be sacked after losing 3-0 to Fulham with no centre-back, says Dale. Look, Dale, I respect people who want the manager out, but I don't respect people who are, you know, going absolutely crazy about sack the manager now because we lost to Palace. If you didn't see that loss when Maguire got injured, it was staring you in the face. I never predict a Man United loss, really. You know I don't. I'm always... We've got a chance. And in the FA Cup final, I won't predict a Man City win. I'll predict a Man United win because I'll get lost in the emotion. And, you know, in fact, look, for the FA Cup final, let's be very, very honest here. Luke Shaw's going to be back. Varane's going to be back. Martinez is going to be back. McTominay's going to be back. Bruno's going to be back. Rashford's going to be back. Lindelof will be back. Martial will probably be back. We're going to have 9 to 10 players back for the FA Cup final. Some of them legit. Some of them could have played last night. I guarantee you'll have a full fit squad for the FA Cup final. 100%. They'll all be back for that because it's the FA Cup final. But I might predict that we win that. 1, because I'm an idiot, and 2, because we've got a fully fit squad. But last night, that's just a loss. Shashank says, just get rid of all these shit players, Mark. Please just do it. Can't wait, watch these bunch of losers downing tools, says Shashank. Andrew says, it's sad to say that the players don't care and it has affected me to not watch anymore. This is as bad as when Ranik was in charge and he was right. It's look, some of you might be new. Make sure you smash a like and subscribe. A lot of you will be hardcore community United Stand members. How many times in the last month have I and you agreed that this just feels like Ranik? It's the Ranik era. Like, it's the last 2 months of Ranik. It is so similar. We're in a position in the league where we really should get 6th, but the players can't be arsed. Like, we're just dropping further down the league. We're picking up more injuries. They can't be arsed on the pitch. It's so similar. And then you've got a manager that, look, the results are not acceptable, but a lot of what he's saying, and look, Ranik spoke a lot more sense, if I'm being fair, but a lot of what's been saying is true. Like, and yet we're looking to throw a manager on the bonfire again instead of what is glaringly obvious to me. And also, this also happened 6 years ago when Solskjaer got the job. The final 2 months of the season, they just down tools. That's what we got beat by Everton. The question is, will INEOS really sell 5 to 10 players, says Tom. Why does Ten Hag keep dodging that point? The players are the problem. Where do we go now, says Tom. Well, I think a manager is always going to try and protect players because he needs them to play. As fans, we don't need to do that. Will INEOS sell 5 to 10 players? If they don't, we're screwed. Look, I've said this to you. I'd be very interested to see what you think about this and whether you agree. I genuinely believe that next season will be a good season. I genuinely believe next season will be a good season. Genuinely believe we'll probably get 4th, which will be a good season. We'll be back in the Champions League. Why do I think that? And I don't think it's got anything. I think it'll happen if we keep Ten Hag. I think it'll happen if we replace Ten Hag. I think next season will be a good season because the light switch will go on with a lot of players. And we know they can be good. We've beaten Man City. We've beaten Spurs. We've beaten Arsenal. We've beaten Liverpool. We've done that with Ten Hag. We've done it with Ollie. We've done it with Mourinho. We've done it with these, weak-minded players. I think next season the light switch will go on again. For some of these players, they'll be really good again. But I guarantee in a year after that, they won't. All I will say is Ten Hag proved his qualities at Ajax, says Zach, and these players never proved the quality. Jay says, Ten Hag needs to go, but I know he's not the only person to blame. Problems consume him. We have to come to a new beginning and sell a lot of springing sporting managers, says Jay. As far as I'm concerned, as long as we clear out players, that is the number one priority for me. Faris says, what are your thoughts on Luckhurst's article on Mourinho? Apparently he would walk to Manchester United to get the job. Keep your shoes off. I don't want him anywhere near the club. And I don't want to listen to that prat anymore, really. I want it to be... It's hard because the Manchester Evening News is an old, established newspaper, but that guy's toxic. Disgusting. The stuff I get levelled at me, and that is a chief correspondent who gets to go into press conferences because he works for an organisation that's been working with United for decades. He is toxic. What he said about he said a lot more about a lot of things. What he said about Martial last night was disgusting. He should be apologising for that. It's downright victimisation, and it's out of order. Absolutely out of order. There was a lot of players injured last night, and Martial's basically been injured all season, and he's out of contract. Since when is Martial the target for 8 or 9 players not playing? I like Luke Shaw, I like Martial. What's the difference? One's got a French passport, one's English. Like, they've both been injured all season, basically. Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. Onana, absolute crap, says RSI. Whoever the new manager is, I hope over the last 6 months, INEOS have identified the players to sell. Well, it's all eyes on them, really. If they don't clear players out, I worry. Owen saying, told you from the start, Ten Hag is not capable of managing the club. Shushung, anybody who listens to Michael Owen needs to get a life. This is the guy that sits there and gives Howard Webb a massage every couple of weeks and never challenges him about anything. All Michael Owen's good for is putting you to sleep. You said injuries were not an excuse for Newcastle. No, I didn't, James. Keep Eric Ten Hag. This is not a Newcastle channel, by the way. Newcastle would be in the top 4 if they didn't have the injuries they've got. Look at how crap Spurs are. Look at Villa have done really, really well by being the best of the rest. Newcastle would comfortably be top 4 if they didn't have the injuries they've got. Chelsea, Brighton. Keep Eric Ten Hag for now. If he fails, Amorim next season, says Steg. One major doubt about Ten Hag is his transfers. We're going to talk about where we should go next in a moment. One major doubt about Ten Hag is his transfers and how there's no certain strategy or hope with him and a new budget in the future, says Space. Let's be fair, you can't legislate for Casemiro and Evans in defence and Eriksen in midfield and no proper left back, says Jazz. I mean, look, I said it in the match reaction yesterday. When you deep it, Casemiro doesn't care. I probably would have done a better job than him last night. And as much as that's a joke, you almost feel I might not be joking. Johnny Evans wasn't fit. Wan-Bissaka has checked out, and he's out of position anyway. Eriksen, I would file with Casemiro. Absolutely useless. Kobe Mainoo is 19, and it's looking like it's starting to affect him. Same with Garnacho and same with Rasmus. They look like young players that are lost. And can you not understand that? Like, when we were bringing Beckham through and Neville and Butt and Scholes and Giggs, they had people like Cantona and Bruce and Schmeichel and Keane to help them. You're looking at Mainoo yesterday, holding the midfield with Casemiro, who doesn't care, and Eriksen, who's basically retired, next to him. Like, it's that team yesterday was like a very, 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 very... It was like food poisoning. It was like, inevitably, you're going to be shitting on the toilet for a long time. It was so predictable. It was so predictable. We need so many players we can save on the gaffer, says Pat. Explain Liverpool got players back and then fell away, says White. Say whatever, Ten Hag sacked himself by signing Onana, says Sanel. Do you think there is an agreement with INEOS and Ten Hag that the season is over and they're going all out for the FA Cup? I mean, Alex, I spoke about that at the weekend. Would you actually just be focusing on that FA Cup final anyway and not rushing players back because of the FA Cup final? I mean, look, I don't think I agree with that, because if we'd won last night, as much as it would have been a miracle, we've still got a chance of 6th place, which will be the Europa League. We've got no chance of 6th place now. It's Chelsea, Newcastle. So if we want to be in the Europa League, we've got to beat Man City in the FA Cup. Don't even know if it's allowed, but I'd love to see performance-related pay for these players, says Shinny. And if you're Ten Hag in or out, let's not disrespect the man. Criticism is warranted for sure. Time for INEOS to make hard decisions now, says John. I mean, some of the disrespect is disgusting, but predictable from people who can't communicate without getting aggressive. It's just, it's cartoon, childish behaviour. But look, mainstream journalists are doing it, so let's not beat up on those people who are doing it. It's anger, it's frustration. You don't need to start calling people names and stuff like that. I don't agree with that at all. In the heat of a match, when you're angry, yeah, but after a game, when it's over, you don't need to be calling people frauds and stuff like that. It's just, what is that? It's just an aggression. It doesn't make sense to me. Communicate in a more grown-up way. You've got more than enough material to dismantle Ten Hag. I mean, why would you be calling him a bold fraud? Like, you've got more than enough factual information to dismantle him as a manager without... You're almost losing the battle if you start personalising it based on his hairline or using horrible words. Like, does your brain just lead to anger and frustration because you can't compute the facts? Why would you need to call him a bold fraud? Why would you not just talk about the amount of games we've lost, or the lack of, a high line, or the way the midfield's always open, the shots we're conceding? You don't need to call him names. You've got more than enough ammunition to have a legitimate footballing conversation about why you want to sack him. So I don't know why people take it to that level, because you don't need to. The problem with sacking Ten Hag at the end of the season is it repeats the cycle. We wait for a new manager, then we don't have time to reshape the squad, says Jim. Reshape the squad, good point. Charlie says, Mark, I agree that United are decimated and was always a tough ask yesterday. However, this team doesn't look coached, haven't done since the Wolves opening day, says Charlie. Well, we looked very good at Wolves away in January, mate. And to say that we don't look coached, it's very hard to coach a team when you don't have centre-backs, you don't have a left-back, and you don't have a midfield. It's very hard to coach a team when players don't want to be coached. What we're talking about here is, you make a very good point about the lack of coaching. And we are the worst coached team in the league. I agree with Carragher on that, and I agree with you. We are the worst coached team in the league. But you can't coach people who aren't willing to be coached. And for me, it always goes back to the players, because I've been here so many times. If this was the first season after Sir Alex, I'd probably be saying, get rid of the manager. But because we've been here so many times, and I've seen these performances so many times, I've seen it at Goodison under Ollie. I've seen it with Ranik at Brighton. I've seen it with Mourinho at home to people like Palace. I've seen it with Ten Hag, of course. I've seen these performances time and time again where you go, Mourinho's a good coach. Ranik's a good coach. Ten Hag's a good coach. Ollie's tactics are very easy to follow. I mean, if anything, take Mourinho, Ten Hag and Ranik out, because when it comes to coaching, they're more technical than Ollie. So Mourinho, it's all about organisation, concentration and ethic. With Ranik, it's a little bit more, like Ten Hag. They're a little bit more on the front foot, pressing, etc. So some players won't be able to do it because they're not intelligent enough to do it. But Solskjaer's style of football was very, very simple, and it was effective at times. It was about being compact and countering. It's the most basic way of playing football, arguably. When players don't do that, and people start saying it's a lack of coaching, but Solskjaer's style of football wasn't that deep. It was quite straightforward. When players don't do that, yes, they're badly coached, but why are they badly coached? Because they're not doing what the manager's asking them to do. And we saw that last night, and we've seen it countless times. A manager, once you pick a team, can't change it unless they make subs, and those players that come on are better than what you've got and can influence that team. I'm watching United last night like I watched them 2 years ago and 2 years before that, and I'm watching players, and I'm not afraid to say this. Some people will go, it doesn't look like. I will say it. Those players are not following orders. They're not. They're wandering out of position. They're flying into tackles on Casper the Ghost that aren't even there. They're not disciplined. They're not working as a team. They're not playing for the manager. More importantly, they're not playing for the fans. They're not playing for their teammates. They are a bunch of misfits. And you can talk about coaching, but if those players don't want to listen, they're rogue. They're rogue. They've gone rogue. Some players don't even want to put the shirt on. And those that do, some of them don't want to listen. This is the fundamental thing that needs to happen, and it's separate to the manager. The manager thing will get dealt with. But what we all need to be united behind, in my opinion, is we need, whoever the manager is, whoever the owners are, number one, clear them out. Clear them out. I don't even want to see you arguing in the chat, because for me, the manager's going to get dealt with by INEOS. They're going to make a decision. Let's see what happens. But every single one of you should move away from that and actually be like, the players have to be cleared out. We can't have this again. Would you have Mourinho or Southgate, says Daniel? I don't want either of them. Funny how Carragher bagged Casemiro, but would never say that about Henderson, says Ruben. And Michael Owen says, sack Ten Hag and appoint Steve McLaren. I can't believe, look, Michael Owen was a good footballer. I can't believe he gets paid to go on TV. I mean, I laugh at the mainstream. They're a joke. They're an absolute joke. Sky Sports didn't even really focus on the fact that we scored a goal yesterday and it was never a foul on Henderson. I mean, the mainstream are an absolute joke. And long may it continue that they keep giving people like Michael Owen and Tim Sherwood a job, because they are absolutely clueless. Why would you sack Ten Hag and give it to Steve McLaren? Steve McLaren is Ten Hag's guy. Ten Hag asked for Steve McLaren. Why would you even do that? Like, bring Ollie back. Don't fucking use Steve McLaren or Van der Geeg. You're doing the same thing. People say Ten Hag has no identity. How do you have one when players don't have the heart or will to play, says SK. Alex says, appreciate you, Mark. Getting rid of Ten Hag is a mistake. When he's winning Champions Leagues at Bayern, we'll regret it. Everyone's sacking the manager. Everyone's saying sack the manager and the players. If we sack the manager, there is no chance of the players being sold. Ten Hag in, says Luke. Julian says that Luckhurst article about Martial was abuse and disgrace. He should be banned from press conferences. If anybody needs to lose their job, it's him, says Julian. Look, I don't condone people losing their job. I'm sure he's got a family and that, but it's disgusting. And it's not the first time. It's just disgusting. He lets his emotions run away with himself, and I do it. But that is a disgrace. To single Martial out. Martial's got nothing to do with this season. He's been injured all season. That's got nothing to do with him. To pick on Martial last night, and look, a lot of you don't like Martial, and Martial's gone in the summer, but no idiot, when we lost last night or before the team news came out, was going, this is on Martial. Oh, I bet he's broke a fingernail. Like, it's just targeting. Look, some people on Twitter were calling it xenophobia. Are they wrong? Why is it some insignificant French player is getting called out? Like, incredible. If Ten Hag got offered the Bayern job, what would you do if you were in his position, says Jay? I wouldn't take it. I'd be determined to turn this around, but I'm stubborn, and I think Ten Hag is the same. But I can see that why Bayern Munich might want him. What's the point in sacking him now, says Tab. And Harry says pundits get paid to slander players with no fine. And I don't think Casemiro warranted captain yesterday. And I mean, Sandy, what? I've only just read. Was Casemiro the captain? Of course, probably what? I didn't even realise who the captain was yesterday. I mean, that makes it doubly worse. Look, I want to talk about the next manager, because that would be wrong not to do it. Mark, the most fantastic thing you said, the players have gone rogue, says Ray. Well, they have. In my opinion, they've gone rogue. And it's not the first time. And I just want to applaud all of you, because there's a lot of angry people out there. There's a lot of angry people. And we've been in this position before where it can turn into a slagging match and everything like that. And I genuinely didn't want that to happen today, and it hasn't. And I've certainly played my part in that, of course. But I didn't want it to do that, because it would have been easy to go, sack him today or don't sack him, stick with him, you're wrong, shut up, Ten Hag out brigade's toxic, Ten Hag, I didn't want to do that, because I think we're all better than that. I think every single United fan's better than that. I actually feel quite encouraged by two things. One, the manager will be dealt with one way or another. It has to be. Let them get on with it. the biggest focus for everybody I'm seeing this morning is, all right, we changed the manager. Even if a new manager comes in, I want at least 10 of these players fucked off for good. And that's the thing. If a new manager jeopardizes that, it's worrying. Whatever happens with the manager, they've got to clear the players out. And if they don't do that, it's an absolute disgrace. And the second thing that's positive is, Sir Jim Radcliffe's meant to be a Man United fan. There is no way you can be a Man United fan and not want to sell loads of players. Like, there is no United fan out there going, let's give him another chance. There's not. There's anger, there's frustration, and every United fan wants a lot of those players out of this football club. A genuine reset and clean slate. A new manager cannot be allowed to come in and go, I don't want to sell anyone, I want to give them all a chance. Absolutely not. That's one of the reasons I'd keep Ten Hag, of course, but even if we do get a new manager, he has to be told, shut up and sit down. You'll be dealing with the squad that we give you in July because we're clearing out. It's got nothing to do with you. Decisions have been made. Wilcox, Barada, Blanc, Brailsford have to be sat there today going, whoever the manager is, he's gone, he's gone, he's gone. Now, I don't like that in a football club. I don't. I do want a manager to be involved. But this is bigger than the manager now. If they do replace the manager, shut up, sit down. You're not starting till July. Because and when you come back, you'll deal with the squad we give you. They've got to take control. They've got to fuck them off. Because the big takeaway, as Ray said, this team has gone rogue. Rogue One. Very good film, actually. Probably the only positive thing Disney have done with Star Wars. But this squad's gone Rogue One. There are players that aren't injured. Well, they are injured, but they could have put a shirt on last night. And there are players on that pitch who put a shirt on and can't be arsed. Who's worse? Neither. They're both as bad. If you didn't put a shirt on for United last night and you could have done, you're bad. And if you did put a shirt on last night and you didn't try, you're bad. Rogue. Get rid of them. Get rid of them. Nobody's going to cry. I mean, look, if I said to you, the whole team, apart from Garnacho, Rasmus and Mainu, has been sold, and I've bought in 22 new players that are well scouted, would you cry? No, you'd go, let's get to work. It's a reset. Now, that's not going to happen. We're not going to sell 22 players, but I think the mindset of the fan base is now, let's just get on with it. Let's have a brand new start. Tracy Taylor, welcome to the Members Club. You're a legend. I have to say this. What's your thought on this poll being the biggest Erik Ten Hag out poll on United stands so far, says Space Oddie. I'll talk about that now because it's perfect timing. SK doesn't like the identity of Erik Ten Hag and appreciate you, Mark. Getting rid of Erik Ten Hag is a mistake, says Alex. So on a poll at the moment, either or, keep Ten Hag or sack Ten Hag. 59% would keep and 41% would sack. It's not the lowest because last night it was 50-50. So already it's starting to move back. And look, I will say there's 22,000 votes there. You'll have people watching this show who don't support Man United. So there 60% would keep Ten Hag, 40% wouldn't. I mean, look, I don't think INEOS are watching. I don't think anyone at Man United are watching. But I would take note of that and go, even 50-50 based on what's happened this season is remarkable, because I'm telling you now, in the last days of Ollie, that was 80% out. In the last days of Mourinho, that was 80% out. In the last days of Van Gaal, it was 80% out. Why is it that Ten Hag still isn't even at 50-50 in this fan base? Why is it that so many people would still stick with Ten Hag? And I think that's something INEOS need to take into account. They can ignore it, it's up to them, but they should take it into account, because it shows that the fans are tired of the players. It doesn't even show that the fans love Ten Hag. I don't know whether Ten Hag's the right guy. I've said this. Look, next season would be the season I would make my mind up. But I'm exhausted and on the floor with the players. And I just don't... I want to walk down the path that's less trodden. I don't want to walk down the path of throwing the manager under the bus. I want to actually get rid of players. And if keeping Ten Hag means we get rid of 12 players and replacing Ten Hag means we get rid of 6, I'm keeping Ten Hag. I wish we had that detail. I wish we could vote on it, but we're not. This is not a democracy. This is a football club that's owned by a dictatorship, whether it's a good one or a bad one. But it is interesting because I think the reason people are still in the majority or 50-50 on Ten Hag is because the priority is to remove the players, and that is the be all and end all. And that's very, very interesting. In relation to replacing the manager, I finally get around to it. If Ten Hag was to be sacked at the end of the season, where do you go? I honestly do not want... Look, I'm very consistent. I never wanted Matic. I never wanted Lukaku. I never wanted Fellaini. I never wanted Moyes. But I backed them. I mean, I wanted Moyes sacked after 2 months. I'll put my hands up. I think we lost a home game in the September or the October. Maybe it was a late draw against somebody, but I wanted him gone very, very quickly. If Ten Hag was to get sacked, and it's a very realistic if, let's be honest, I can't bury my head in the sand. If Ten Hag got sacked, I'd move heaven and earth for a big name. Like, look, if INEOS can get Ashworth from Newcastle and they can get Barada from Man City, why can't you get Ancelotti from Real Madrid, which you're not going to get? Why can't you get Emery from Aston Villa, which you're not going to get? I would go and get the very best you can get. I don't want Thomas Tuchel. I think he's such a red flag, and I don't really warm to the guy. He just got... I don't judge a book by its cover. I'm judging him by what I've seen as a coach. So I'm not... It's not like I don't... It's not like I look at him and go, he's a bit tall and skinny. That's not what I mean. It's not a looks thing. It's just... I've seen Tuchel on the touchline a lot. I've seen him do interviews a lot. He's been around the game for a long time. I just don't like him. I don't warm to him. Maybe that... But if he got the job, I will back him. I'm not that. I don't do that. Like, if we sign a player... I had no idea why we signed Mason Mount. But he was a good player at Chelsea. Let's see what happens. I didn't want Onana. I wanted De Gea to stay. But it's not his fault. Let's see what happens. So if we get Tuchel, I'll back it. But I don't want him. De Zerbi... I like De Zerbi. I do like De Zerbi. But I think he's a big red flag. And I think that's why Liverpool didn't go near him as well. I just think De Zerbi concerns me. Amorim is a very hipster choice. And maybe I like him more than De Zerbi and Tuchel because he's the unknown. I know too much about Tuchel. And De Zerbi just worries me. So maybe Amorim's more appealing. Hansi Flick, I don't think he's ever been really considered by Man United. And I feel that with Flick, I've always said with Flick, what's the difference between him and Ten Hag? He's a foreign coach coming in. The media won't like it. And he's still going to try and do the things that Ten Hag has tried to do. So why not stick with Ten Hag and actually give him the players? So yeah, it's difficult. Look, you shouldn't not sack a manager because you don't like what's out there. That shouldn't be the predominant reason. If they don't sack Ten Hag, they should be doing it because they believe we can be good under Ten Hag if we remove the players and bring the right players in. That's the reason I would do it. But if you did sack him, the big mistake would be to sack him and take a risk. You can't take a risk. You can't take a risk. Tuchel's a risk. De Zerbi's a risk. If you're gonna sack him, do what you've done with the CEO and do what you've done with the director of football. Bring in best in class. Now, is anybody out there available best in class at the moment? I don't see it. I don't see a manager out there that goes, unless they can pull off a miracle. Unless they can say to Real Madrid, can you get Alonso out of Leverkusen now and we'll take Ancelotti? I don't know. Jevon says, with these polls, the majority of the viewers will be influenced by whatever the host thinks, which isn't a bad thing as it happens on every channel, but it's hard to get an accurate reading on things. Jevon, I disagree, actually. I think you're being very disrespectful to a community that's been here for 10 years and always has been very, very opinionated. I mean, from the very first shows, it was like, I don't want you to agree with me. I actually want you to have different opinions. You're being very disrespectful to this community if you think that they follow what the host says. They don't. They definitely don't. I mean, you clearly didn't watch the Rashford video 3 months ago. It was an absolute pile-on against me. So people do have their own opinion. Ancelotti with Everton and now at Madrid is the same guy with different players, says NC. Sandeep says, if Timmy Mallet was manager, he still wouldn't be able to wake up some of these players with his mallet, says Sandeep. Mark, so Jim recently did an interview talking about how the environment at United has let down previous managers over the last decade. Do you see that as an endorsement of Ten Hag, says Nick? Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen with the manager. what I do know is in the short term, we've got a massive game coming up against Arsenal, and we need to get players back ready for that, don't we? Because if we play Arsenal with that team last night, it could be 7-8. Like, we could get our biggest Old Trafford defeat ever. Like, it's... And I'll say that on Tuesday morning. Like, if we put that team out against Arsenal on Sunday, we'll get beat 7 or 8-0. Like, and that's not being melodramatic. We will get thumped. And then you'll all go, sack Ten Hag. But some of us will go, I knew we were going to get battered on Tuesday. Look at the team. Look at the play. I mean, Christian Eriksen running round as a number 8 in 2024. You'd almost be better with Michael Carrick doing it now in his 40s. Like, Eriksen is redundant as a midfielder. Amrabat must be fucking rubbish. Now, must just say this. This needs to be said. Certain people were saying last night 9 of the team that started are Ten Hag picks. Onana's a shambles. We've already said that. Delo isn't a Ten Hag pick. He was bought by somebody else. Casemiro was bought by Ten Hag to be a holding midfielder. He's playing as a centre-back, and also he was a panic signing. He wasn't what Ten Hag wanted. He was bought in the last week of the transfer window for an expensive amount. Johnny Evans was a free transfer, a player he didn't even want. Wan-Bissaka wasn't his signing. Mainu is a 19-year-old number 8 playing as a 6. Eriksen was brought in on a free transfer 2 years ago and has been finished since Andy Carroll ended his career. Mason Mount isn't even fully fit. Garnacho's a kid on the wing. Rasmus is a youngster who's been brought in to play up front and has had to play up front week in, week out for 90 minutes because he hasn't got any backup and he's learning on the job. And Anthony was a panic buy at the end of the window for ridiculous money. Let's not pretend that because 9 of those players are Ten Hag picks that we can judge that performance. I mean, that's like putting a bloody Porsche body kit on a Mini Metro and saying it's a Porsche. You know, you lift it up and go, oh, it's a Mini Metro. Like, you can't say that because there's 9 Ten Hag players picked last night that's a reason for us to win. Like, some of them are injured, some of them are not fit, some of them are out of position, some of them are panic buys, some of them are loan deals. If last night we had Luke Shaw at left back, Martinez, Varane, Delo, Onana, Casemiro, Mainu, Bruno, Rashford, Garnacho, Højlund, and you get beat 4-0, we're having a completely different conversation. But it's not that, is it? And you can get angry about it, of course you can, respect, but you also have to be a little bit realistic about the fact that that team was fucking shit last night. Some of them were a disgrace, but also it was a bunch of misfits, and it was a bunch of misfits the minute the team came out. Erik Ten Hag for 1 more season with the right backing, says Craig. Tracked Amorim for 3 years. Convinced he's for us, says Steg. Well, look, if it's Tuchel, Amorim, or De Zerbi, I'd go Amorim. I would. And I think he'd get the best out of Bruno. That's where I would go. That's the only one that excites me. You know what? I'll leave you with this. What I don't want to do is see Ten Hag get sacked, someone like Tuchel come in and start depressed and start concerned. If we're going to replace the manager, I want to at least be in a position where I can go, I hope Ten Hag goes and proves people wrong, but he's gone. Much the same as I did with Ranik. But this manager excites me. If we're going to replace the manager, please give us something that's exciting. Because Tuchel doesn't excite me, and I don't think it's. The bad thing about Tuchel is I think 50% of the fan base will be unsure about him from the start, and that's never good. Same thing happened with Moyes. If they're going to replace him, they've got to bring somebody in that inspires and excites. And I think Amorim would be exciting. It would be a massive risk. But yeah, I don't want that. Look, well, maybe we'll talk about that more on the 8 o'clock show tonight. But we've got Fabrizio on the show today. I forgot. It was meant to be on yesterday. But we've got Fabrizio at 2:30 on the show today. So make sure you tune in for that. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I actually think you lot deserve a lot of credit. I clapped you last night and I'll clap you again. I think your behaviour in the circumstances has been amazing. And I think that you deserve a lot better. And it gives me hope that we will rise again at some point in the future with such an amazing fan base and personally an amazing community, because I think to wake up this morning and be able to come in and have an open conversation with the many different things, we've all got really different opinions. But remember, none of us are actually sat there going, keep it as it is. Let's keep all these players. Everybody wants a ruthless clear out. They just want different players to go or a different manager to be here. We all want the same thing. And it's encouraging to see that this morning when some people want to drive it into a really, fuck them, we're right. What does that serve? You know, this Ten Hag in out movement, let's bin it. We're better than that. The manager will be here or he won't. For me, and I think you this morning, we want to see the rogues kicked out. That has to be the number one thing. Fantastic show this morning. Take care, everyone. Fabrizio Romano at 2:30 live. Podcast is coming out very, very quickly. Hopefully have that out sort of early afternoon for you. Be talking about this cease and desist letter and all that stuff I'd completely forgotten about. Take care, everyone, and speak to you in a bit.